my mom, one of the things that she would always emphasize is don't feel sorry for yourself. Really was coming from, she would always basically don't compare yourself to other people, which is where, don't have any self-pity. Self-pity is a form of comparing yourself to what other people have or don't have, right? Or whether it's material things or whether it's skills.
Mm-hmm.
Self-pity has so much to do with a comparison to other people. Going back to something that you had talked about, the pursuit of money, the paper chasing tactic, there's strategies of how you do that. And you can either do it with attachment or without attachment. And that's the difference of being unhappy versus happy.
Yeah.
But the pursuit of money really is a way to get the most of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, talk about pushing yourself mentally to get the most of who you are and what you can offer.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome to episode 7 of Take the Next Step. I'm your host, Ryan Sterling. In each episode, I interview someone who's taken on a personal growth journey, and it's my job to dissect that journey one step at a time. And today, I'm super excited to share with you my interview with Angie Gallagher. Today, Angie is a successful sales executive. But it wasn't always this way. Angie grew up in poverty in rural Appalachia, but she was the first in her family to go to college. She ultimately was able to make her way out west, where she worked at a high-end art gallery, ultimately becoming a well-known photographer, working with some of the wealthiest and most influential families in the country. And today, again, she's a successful sales executive. Angie's story is really inspiring. And besides just talking about her story, we cover some other areas such as content creation, the importance of sales, how to see people just as people, regardless of who they are and where they come from. And then finally, we talked about LinkedIn and why LinkedIn is the networking party we all need to be at. I really enjoyed my time with Angie, and I'm proud to call her a friend today. So with that, I hope you enjoy today's episode with Angie Gallagher. I was watching your LinkedIn videos, which are amazing, by the way. They are
nice
so good. Oh my God. I can't wait to consume more. But the settings are always, I mean, some of them you do in what looks like your office or your studio, but you're around the Red Rocks. Are you close to that area?
It's about 30 minutes away.
Okay.
So it's the famous Red Rocks amphitheater that you did the Sunday Bloody Sunday.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I always think about Dave Matthews Band with
oh, do you?
With the Live at Red Rocks, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one as well.
Yeah. But it's an amazing backdrop.
Oh, it is. Thanks. And I'm just picking little corners of it. You'll see some other areas. Coming up, there's so many areas other than the amphitheater.
Yeah. So what do you, I'm just curious. So with these videos, because you do a lot on, I've seen you talking about sales, about marketing, about networking, but then there's also about resiliency and mindsets. And I've seen, choice, tenacity. I mean, it's a really diverse set of videos that you do. I'm just curious, what made you want to start putting those out?
Well, the way I think of it is get the most from each click, right? Mm-hmm. We all dive into LinkedIn, and usually when we first start, we only connect with people that we know or we've met in person. So it's typical for most people to have less than 2,000 contacts. Then as I moved into sales position, so for years I was a creative, I had my own business and I was a portrait photographer, and I did high scale, like high-end luxury portrait, if you will. Yeah. And then one thing kind of led to the next, and that little summary is in my LinkedIn profile, and I ended up in sales. And it definitely was my strong suit, having a business. So with that being said, I started utilizing LinkedIn a lot more. And then I got into the next phase of the LinkedIn user, like, oh, I don't really need to be just LinkedIn to the people I know personally. I
Yeah.
can actually go and meet other people,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it was my job to find healthcare startups around the world. So I started diving into LinkedIn and quickly saw how incredibly useful that platform is, even on the free version.
Mm-hmm.
And so as I learned more and more, Ryan, then what I decided was I need to get this much out of my time on LinkedIn versus this much. So if I'm going to go in for 30 minutes or an hour in the morning, I want that impact versus just dilly-dallying,
Yep.
right? And so
Mm-hmm.
I started learning more and more. And the reason why I started creating content is because then you become top of mind and you really kind of become, let's forget top of mind. Let's say it's kind of like, to me, LinkedIn is the networking party that you just don't want to miss. And
Yeah.
you got to know where to go
Yeah.
in the party. And so I've learned and have found content creators. And then when you make a comment, when they post, then you're joining the party, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're at their party and you're there making comments and you meet other people. So if you're in healthcare, you find the healthcare
Mm-hmm.
influencers who are posting frequently and you jump in and make a comment and you'll find other healthcare professionals.
Yeah, interesting. That's fascinating. So is that how you've grown your network to be so large on LinkedIn?
Well, no, it actually started with going and directly sending invitations.
Okay.
And I
Yeah.
would do it, I would do it in a way that would make sense in terms of who I really needed to be
Mm-hmm.
in the network and for me to be of value to theirs. So, for example, in Denver, you can go in LinkedIn and you can search people based on geography and industry. And then I'd put maybe second connections, right? So they know someone that I know. And and so I would start, that's where I started, is just reaching out to the people in the Denver community and saying, hey, I'm in Denver. We're both Denver professionals. Um, it might be, we're both in Denver, healthcare professionals. The world is small, because
Mm-hmm.
that is true. The
Yeah,
world
no
is,
doubt. 100%.
yeah, and even to the ones I would send in India or
Yeah.
London or Africa, I kind of usually throw in the world is small. Let's
Yeah.
connect.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. So I'm curious because just looking at your background, I see that you have your MFA and you mentioned some time at NYU. So I mean, how does that? Because you definitely have a creative spirit and creative soul, and you can tell it. It comes across in your messaging. So is that something where do you leverage that experience you have as a creative in creating that content?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also just an Angie thing. It's like I was on this, you know, sales call the other day and people were just, I'm hearing the same language. Well, let's have an exploratory call. Let's discover this. And I'm thinking, wah, wah. It's like, let's pick some other words here.
I love
Those
it. Yeah.
words have been used for like 5, 10 years. It's like the word innovative. Well, I
Mm-hmm.
use the word inventive now.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
how do you break out?
Mm-hmm.
It's saying the same thing, but with a slightly different twist. And as a creative, with the creative background, I mean, I have hours on end of critiquing and looking and evaluating and also determining, how can I push this further? And really, with my own kids, the number one skill that I want them to have is to have, to learn to write. Writing,
Yeah.
writing emails, writing
Mm-hmm.
a resume, writing a LinkedIn post, writing, you name it. Writing is an art in which, how do you connect to others?
Mm-hmm.
Art is how we connect to others,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's a commercial form, right? And so with the videography, I was a still photographer and I was a portrait photographer. And so I understood the use of props.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, I
Well,
see that.
glasses, right?
Yeah.
And so it's and then how do I push it to the next level? I mean, So it's I have some ideas, but as a professional, my goal isn't to be an influencer.
Mm-hmm.
My goal is to be a part of the community.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I definitely believe in that philosophy. When you give more, you get more.
Mm-hmm.
But you give intentionally,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you give
Mm-hmm.
intentionally. And then with that, having some focus, with that, the creative part of it is, really on LinkedIn, everybody's saying the same stuff. Same stuff. Be positive.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Be happy,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw that one video where it was like these gold middle fingers.
Yeah, I saw that one.
That,
Yeah.
that is
Yeah.
probably one of my favorites because I got those glasses in a pack and I
Yeah.
was like, I'm never going to be able to use these things. Like,
Yeah.
when am I going to?
Yeah.
And then I kept seeing the feeds. People, were like, just be happy, be positive. And those are important messages. But what I always think of which comes with my creative background is how can I see this differently? What's the other angle we're not covering here? And that one with the middle finger was, the title on it was, what if happiness is hard?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that's the reality, is that it's more than just, hey, going down to the grocery store and buying a gallon of milk. That's not how happiness works. And there's a lot of people out there, they look at that stuff and they're like, oh, there's those people again,
Mm-hmm.
just being happy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not something that comes easy to me. you
Mm-hmm.
know,
I think it's a good point. I mean, happiness is hard, and you're right. If things are not going your way, the last thing you want to see is someone who is in a perfect setting where everything is amazing, saying just be positive.
yeah.
Are just
Which is an illusion.
100%, and
Yeah.
exactly, and instinctively we want to push against that because, in many respects, it's good to not feel. It's good to feel this discomfort with not being happy. Now, you don't want to be there for that long. So, like, so happiness? Sometimes it is hard. So, what's
Yeah.
your advice for someone that is stuck right now and looking to feel happy?
Yeah. It's the core of it, Brian, is being present. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
when you can learn those skills, and I so my family background is Thai. And so we have generations of Buddhist monks. I did not grow up Buddhist.
Mm-hmm.
It is something that I went back to later, and I want to emphasize that Buddhism is it's a philosophy. It gets lumped into religion, but you can
Mm-hmm.
be Catholic and practice Buddhism. And Buddhism really is a form of, and there's many different kinds. There's the Zen, there's Theravada, which is the Thai version. And the work and the studying and the reading that I've done with that, it is a daily exercise.
Mm-hmm.
And that is my key to being happy.
Mm-hmm.
When we want to control things, and it's an absolute illusion, and so, I'm spiritual, so I believe in a higher power, a God, if you will. Even if you're scientific, like out here we have the, I think they're called the secular something, but basically they believe in science. So they believe in like the forces of science. If you think about gravity, right?
Mm-hmm.
So whatever it is that you believe, even if you're a believer in science, those that believe in science would probably say, yeah, there's a lot of synchronicity that goes on in this world.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not God, is what they would say. It's not God, it's science. So that's cool. So whatever it is that you believe
Yeah,
in,
totally.
that synchronicity, when you understand that, then you have no control, but you are co-creating in life.
Mm-hmm.
And when you can let go, but be proactive and intentional, that has been my path to being happy and not ruminating, not driving myself crazy. And it's not as easy as it sounds. This is truly living. You're living in the moment, like,
Mm-hmm.
oops, ruminating.
Yeah, no, 100%.
You
I
know?
mean, I have a hard time with the word happiness because I mean, I see happiness as, and I feel like generally a very happy person. I'm a very optimistic person.
Yeah.
I feel like a person that's on a mission, has meaning, purpose, etc. I feel like I've invested in my relationships. Like on a day-to-day basis, I feel happy. But I say feel intentionally because I feel like happiness is an emotion. It's a feeling. It's something you feel in a moment. But I also feel sadness.
Yeah.
But I can still, in a moment of sadness, appreciate feeling sad. And there's a lot of good reasons to feel sad and allow yourself to feel that emotion, to feel the full range of emotions, to feel scared, to feel optimistic, to feel nervous. Again, these are all really good feelings that instead of hiding them, I feel like leaning into them. And I more try to change the happiness or sadness to just anything that's happening to me. Number one, always live in a place of gratitude, but number two, assigning a meaning to it all. And I can be sad if certain thing in my business doesn't go my way. I can feel sad about it and I can feel upset. 100%, right?
Yeah, you embrace it.
But then what's the meaning behind, okay, does that mean my business is going to fail? Does that mean I'm going to be homeless? Does that mean worthless? Or does it mean that maybe I need to work on some things? Maybe I need to go back and I need to think about, why did I lose that particular deal? What could I have done differently? And sometimes it's just not a good fit. And I feel like one thing, and this is going back to, I think one thing that you really nail on is your authenticity. And one thing that I've had to get much better at, I feel like in the last year or so, and it's been helpful running my own business, is learning how to be authentic and being okay with losing potential clients because of my authenticity. And sometimes it's just not a good fit, but being okay with that. And I feel like doing so, again, maybe there's certain things I haven't won, but I feel like I've won a lot more because of it. And I'm attracting more people who are the people I want to work with because of that authenticity.
Exactly. Which, goes to this phrase that I love is know thyself.
Yeah, 100%.
The more that you know who you are, and the more, and really it comes down to not about like, I'm going to show everybody who I really am. It's more of like, you actually have to accept who you are. Anybody else can.
100%.
That is the real key behind that. And combining all of those things, like you were saying, when you're sad, you allow yourself to be sad. And when you're, it's the self-awareness, first it's like realizing, wait a minute, I'm kind of sad about this, or I'm, frustrated right now. So first part is that self-awareness. And that truly is, again, going back to being in the present moment.
100%.
And that's another phrase that gets thrown around as well, be in the moment, be present, but it really is, and I've been trying to come up with a different way of expressing it, but
be where your feet are. Like, yeah, I mean, they all get tossed around, but it's a good message though.
It is a good message, and it has a lot of depth. And so, to me, that's really living, living. And I have this other theory. I've been trying to figure out if I found it somewhere, but I call it 10-80-10. And for the most part of my day, I try to be 80% right here, right now, 10% in the past, 10% in the future. Now, sometimes, of course, you're leaning a little forward into the future. But for the majority of my day, like planning for the future, I might be more like 60% leaning in the future. But what happens,
I like that approach. That's a really smart approach.
Thanks. And so so for example, let's take people. Okay. I had this situation where I was networking with someone that, hey, Angie, could you meet so-and-so? I'm like, yeah, sure. That's fine. Met with the person. And then something really strange happened during that meeting. And I was pretty sure I possibly caught the person flat out lying, right? I was pretty sure.
Yeah. And
it was embarrassing for them because someone kind of showed up and sort of even proved it, and it was just kind of like, this is weird. And then, but what I decided with that 10-80-10 was to give that person, to not fully judge them based on that one incident that I don't exactly have 100% proof. I might have 90% proof, but the way I sort of handle it is, well, let me just continue to kind of see and live in the current moment versus living 80% in the past of what happened in this incident.
Yeah.
And then I'll just keep evaluating. And if these patterns keep happening, then that probably is going to be someone that goes in the outer layer of my network.
Yeah. I think that's a really interesting point you make. And I think so much of that, though, could be applied. Look at the political environment that we're in right now. And I was talking to someone about this last night, and it is one of those things. And this is both sides. This is right and left, where we're in a place now where if you're not 100% in, you're 0% in. And you could be somebody who is more on the left, but agree maybe with one thing the president's done.
Yeah.
And they'll completely throw you out. And I think that point of, it's okay, again, politically, if you more identify with the left, you can have 10% of your thoughts or ideology be aligned with the right. And that's not wrong. We all have a different set of perspectives. So I like that, though, because I think it is really easy to throw people out or throw ideas out by 10%.
But when you remind yourself and you're right in the moment, right? Forgetting the past of this experience with that person, or even like when you hear things about other people, you know, and we want to just judge them based on the relationship that we have with them. That is the 10-80-10.
Yeah.
No, you're not leaning in on a past that really belongs to someone else. You're footnoting it and you're acknowledging the information, but being fully present, acknowledging that your relationship with that person could be massively different than someone else that told you.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of ways to apply that 10-80-10. I mean, even eating, Ryan. You know, I do my best when I eat. It's like every bite matters.
Yeah.
That's living.
I love it. No, I mean, you make a great point with that. It's funny. I was listening to, a guy by the name of Dan Buettner. So he's the author. Have you heard the Blue Zones?
No.
Okay. So the Blue Zones, it's these pockets of the world where people are living high quality lives into their hundreds. So you have people who are 102, they're still walking, unassisted, they're living lives of meaning and purpose. And there's a whole bunch of variables that go into this. But one that you just mentioned with the food that I thought was really interesting is, so number one, their environments are such that it's conducive to living a healthier lifestyle. They're close to the community. They're walking more. Just the food that's around is healthier. But one thing he said that was really interesting was, in his opinion and his observation, that it's with eating, it's not necessarily what you're eating, but it's how you're eating. Which I thought was really interesting. So it's not just eating healthy food, but it's, are you eating healthy food with a community? Are you making a ceremony out of it? Are you in the moment with it? And that really is
wolfing it down.
100%. And someone who lives in New York City that's always on the go, I ever since I heard that, I do think about that more. And where it's, again, the culture of eating lunch at your desk as a badge of honor. Like, well, actually, maybe it's good to
not have a badge of honor.
I mean, I look, I worked in many environments where it is, and it's.
I never fell for that.
You know what? Unfortunately, I kind of had to for a while. You know, it was. I worked with someone who it was the eating at the desk and it was the bags under their eyes because they don't sleep, and I just. We could go a whole other.
If you could take 10 minutes to just eat.
And be present with it. No doubt. I 100% agree.
And you know, health and wellness is a big, you know, I mean, I'm a real, ask anybody in my family, I'm like, you need to eat more protein. I love my food. I'm a little off the wagon now, but you know, it's the difference if we look at large, you know, of the obesity problems that we have. People just mindlessly eat.
Oh, 100%.
And then they don't enjoy it. So they don't enjoy it. So they eat more.
Yeah.
That doesn't make you enjoy it more.
Yeah.
So, you know, that really the 10-80-10, you know, when you get that kind of fully present and fully, you know, living each moment of life, that to me is
Yeah.
one of the cogs of a key to happiness.
I think you're right. I mean, in my business, I'm a financial advisor and wealth coach.
Oh,
And I work with a lot of people who, are high income earners. I mean, they make into six figures and they have credit card debt. And it's one of those where every time they get a $20,000 or $30,000 raise, their expenses go up by
yeah.
35,000. And being present and applying mindfulness to managing money and budgeting, it's amazing to see. So part of this is when I have people track expenses and go through their budget, it's not to say don't spend your money. It's not to say cut. But what I talk about though is tracking your expenses and keeping a budget. It's not about saying no. It's about saying yes to the things that matter and no to the
Yeah.
things that don't.
Yep.
And to put up a
Yep.
mirror to your expenses to say, how much are you spending on things that aren't getting you closer to your best, most intentional life?
Right.
And actually maybe rerouting some of that money, to saving and investing for the future. But maybe part of that is also taking it and investing more in the areas of your life that you're getting great value out of, where you could actually
Right.
be spending more money. So part of that, again, the mindfulness of where not only what we're putting in our mouth, but also how we're spending our money, how we're using this resource that we trade our time to accumulate, and then how we actually then take that resource and how we use it. Are we doing it in an intentional way or in an unintentional way? And it's amazing to see the progress people can make when they apply that lens of mindfulness and intention to
Yeah.
managing wealth, and how they save so much more money, but they're no worse. They're actually better off. They feel better.
Yeah. Yeah. I think probably logging your food and logging what you spend are probably the same emotion.
100%. No question. No question.
People
So
resist it, they don't want to do it.
no
So much
doubt.
better for them.
People hate me for it. They fight me about it. But ultimately, like once you get a couple months into it, and I always tell people, like, you don't have to do this forever. Just do it for a couple of months. But it's amazing to see
Yeah.
the progress people can make by doing so. But
Yeah.
so one thing that I really want to talk about here is, so I look at you right now, this is so far an awesome conversation, and we're so much in alignment with the way that we think. And again, I really appreciate your videos, and I look forward to consuming more of them. But it's interesting to see, here you are today, you're making these videos that are really having an impact on people. You're a sales executive. You've made a really good life for yourself. But I know it wasn't always that way, and I know it wasn't easy for you. So here's
Right.
where you are now, again, making these videos in Red Rock and really making an impact. But this wasn't given to you. So can we take it
Right.
all the way back to your
Yeah.
upbringing, and can we bridge the gap to get to where you are now?
Yeah. So, I grew up in a rural area of Ohio. My family is basically Appalachian redneck. We are,
Thai Appalachian rednecks.
well, yeah, so it's funny. One side is generation of Baptist preachers, and we are talking the mountain. Like, people would ask me, "Did you see snakes?" I didn't see snakes, but I wouldn't doubt if they were there. Like,
Yeah, got it.
river baptisms,
Yeah.
and the other side, which I didn't see because we were living in Ohio and couldn't afford to fly back, was just even further generations of Buddhist monks. And so the upbringing was very rich in the Appalachian culture.
Yeah.
I had plenty of baked beans and things like that.
Yeah.
And so it was really, the turning point was when my parents divorced, or when my mom left my dad, and we ended up in a small college town. And that really was the massive pivot on my future. And so, because I lived in a college town, and that it was just sort of assumed, everybody around me was going to college.
Mm-hmm.
And so I ended up going to the college there. And I was always an artist. I always illustrated and painted. And when I was in high school, I did small medals. So I was always a very creative thinker, but I was always very entrepreneurial too. And so, growing up, it was me, my mom, and my sister. My mom basically we lived on welfare, and while she was putting herself through nursing school, and I was the first person in my Appalachian side to get a degree.
Was your
And
mom on the Thai side or the Appalachian side?
yeah, my mom is on the Thai side. So my
Okay.
parents met in Vietnam War. My dad was in
Okay.
the Air Force.
Okay.
And so, I stayed in touch with my dad. We'd see him in the summer, and I've got a great relationship with my dad. But then, it was college that really changed so much for my trajectory. And
Well, can I ask real fast though?
yeah,
Why? So, do you guys? What college town was this?
Athens, Ohio.
Okay.
I
Okay. So,
used
yeah. Okay. Okay. And you guys moved there because your mom was going to nursing school?
We actually moved there because we ended up in a women's shelter.
Okay.
Yeah. And so we lived there. I can't even tell. I may need to ask her about this, but we lived there maybe 6 months, something like that.
So this
And
was your parents got divorced. Your mom took you and your sister, and Athens, Ohio was at the closest women's shelter.
pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was, my mom had no family, like nobody here. And so we ended up there, and that's why we landed in Athens, Ohio, which was a small college town. So there's like maybe 30,000 students. I know that's a big gap, but
I was gonna say that's a big.
20, at the time it was, I think, around 20,000. I'm guessing it's got to be a little bit bigger now.
Yeah.
But the town itself is small, and it's an early, sort of settled kind of town where there's a lot of brick roads, a lot of brick buildings. And so it's quaint, very hilly, and did my bachelor's there, and just being very competitive, knew I would go on to grad school. And that's when I left Ohio.
So growing up then in Athens, so you went to high school in Athens?
Yeah.
So I'm assuming you probably went to high school with kids of professors and people. I mean, was the town run by the college effectively?
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
run by the college, but there was a variety of people and backgrounds, blue collar workers, and not everybody's parent was a professor, but probably 20% were.
So it was just then assumed because of the cohort you were in that I'm going to
Yeah.
go to college.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's
Now,
really interesting.
there was a community college nearby, and some people ended up there, but those of us that didn't have the means to go elsewhere for college, or even have the parents that encouraged us and knew how to do that process, I had to do that process all by myself.
Yeah.
You
Were you a good student in high school?
Not at all.
Not at all. I mean, why? Was it just school didn't come naturally to you, or you just didn't care?
Didn't. No, I think I'm undiagnosed ADD or
Yeah.
ADHD,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
I just couldn't perform well. I couldn't comprehend. And then, my mom is someone where English is a second language.
Yeah.
I mean, even today, people will say, "How do you understand your mom?"
Yeah.
Like, well, she's talking to me.
Yeah.
So don't listen to that. When she talks to other Americans, she slows way down. But when you live in a home with an immigrant, it's almost like we have our own language.
Yeah. I can see that. That's a good way to put it. Did you what were the crowd of people you were hanging out with? What did that look like?
Oh yeah, I hung out with the alternative crowd.
Okay. So this is like
we
90s.
Party.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Got it.
80s, early 90s.
Yeah.
It was my friend's house. We threw the parties.
Yeah. Okay.
And then when I went to college, I didn't really do that anymore.
Yeah.
So I just, totally goofed off in high school.
Yeah.
But when I was in college, I could actually pick topics that I really was highly interested in and could invest in. And I was more project oriented versus testing oriented. Now, one of my kids, I think definitely, he definitely has ADHD. But today resources are so different. And I maximize because I advocate. My mom being a Thai immigrant, putting herself through school, she just wasn't available to advocate and know how to get resources for me. So I'm very much self-taught
Mm-hmm.
in a lot of ways.
How do you think though, it's interesting, is like one of the videos you mentioned, you said, you said great skills that come out of when you don't have as much.
Oh, uh-huh.
So it's interesting though, because there's part of it, it seems, again, part of your messaging is, you use this to your advantage though, it seems like.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Silver lining.
Yeah. But
Always a silver lining.
but how, was that something innate within you? Was that something intentional within you? I guess, did you know at the time that this is going to be something that I'm going to be able to leverage to my advantage?
Oh, no, definitely didn't know at the time. Used it much later and much more aware of how, I used it. But at the time it was not fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
Growing up like that and building those skills was extremely painful. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it was all wrapped inside of shame and embarrassment.
Mm-hmm.
Even with my party friends, I mean, there were people that knew where I lived. I kind of lived in the so-called projects of Athens, Ohio, where they accepted government assistance and things
Mm-hmm.
like that. But, it still was everything that I did, try to avoid talking about where I lived, talking about my parents because they didn't have, the jobs that maybe their parents had. So everything was like, again, going back to an illusion, I couldn't accept, myself and for what we didn't have.
Mm-hmm. So
But
what was your mother and father, were they encouraging you to create a life that's different than this one? Or was there something in the back of your mind that said, I don't want to live this way when I'm older?
Ah, um, so my dad was always very encouraging. He is always like, you can do anything, you can go and do whatever you want. Now, the one thing that I do regret, though I don't have regrets, but he would always tell me you should get a business degree.
Hmm.
And I really should have business. That was the one thing I didn't listen to him, and I should have. And, and so neither of them are entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
But my mother is really great at real estate, and so is my Thai family. But the positivity, I will say, is just an innate quality. I do look at that and ask myself that, and I ask myself, well, if happiness is something that comes so easy to me, and if I'm going to be giving to the world, then what is it that I can take and sort of package up and
Mm-hmm.
share with other people that might help somebody?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So if it comes innate, that doesn't really help many people.
Mm-hmm. Was your mother, was she practicing Buddhism at the time? No.
No, I think just intrinsically Buddhist, because
Okay.
when we finally went to Thailand when I was in my 20s, um, suddenly everything made sense. And I
Interesting.
remember my sister and I talking like somehow everything makes sense about the way our mother is and about the way that we were raised. Whether we had direct Buddhist teachings, it's inside of her.
Mm-hmm.
Really, it's in our blood. I mean,
How so? How so? Like, what was it that gave you that insight?
well, being in Thailand, I feel that, let me see here, let me dig deep on this one. My mom, one of the things that she would always emphasize is don't feel sorry for yourself. Now, of course, not exactly Buddhist, but where that really was coming from, she would always basically don't compare yourself to other people, which is where, don't have any self-pity. Self-pity is a form of comparing yourself to what other people have or don't have, right? Or whether it's material things or whether it's skills.
Mm-hmm.
Self-pity has so much to do with a comparison to other people.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel that when we were in Thailand, that aspect of just the gestalt of kind of like not really staying in your lane, but being, you know, the self-awareness of who you are and just being focused on that, to me is probably what we were feeling when we were there.
Interesting.
And we were in areas, I mean, nobody spoke English. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you're just walking around with a piece of paper drawing stick figures.
I mean, was it, and these were visiting relatives of yours for the first time?
Totally.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
How was their standard of living compared to where you were living in Ohio at the time?
Yeah, shocking.
Shocking.
Absolutely shocking. Yeah, because it's third world country, and
Mm-hmm.
even though our uncle, I would say, definitely is on the upper echelon of Thai, being with what he does, he's a businessman. It's still vastly different in terms of the way that they live. He had a super nice house and it was huge, but it's not an American house.
Yeah.
And then you start understanding, that we feel like, I guess, you feel bad, right? Like, wow, look how little they have.
Mm-hmm.
In general in
Mm-hmm.
Thailand or any third world country. But then when you're there and you're there long enough, you realize this is just the way of life. They don't feel sorry for themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Did your mom ever complain growing up?
I don't think she was allowed to because we weren't allowed to. And I have a feeling our grandmother didn't allow
it. So even living in the projects of Athens, Ohio, there was never any sort of comparing to other people. There was never self-pity. There was never complaining about the
You weren't allowed
situation.
to have self-pity.
Wow.
Uh-huh. Yeah, no, my mom like practically yelled at us about it. And actually that was probably the best skill that she beat into me.
Yeah. It's a good skill.
Yeah, and so when you have, which I think is kind of rooted in Buddhism, you're not comparing yourself to others. You don't have self-pity.
Mm-hmm.
And when you don't have self-pity, then you really kind of become grateful for what you have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, no doubt, no doubt. I mean, I think about it, and I know about Buddhism at a very high level, but I think it's a beautiful practice, and it's funny because I mean the two areas that I've really read about more over the last couple of years. I'm talking about Buddhism and Stoicism. And Stoicism coming from the Stoics out of the Roman Empire, Marcus Aurelius, etc. And it's interesting to see two different parts of the world, but two similar philosophies. And I would say Stoicism is very much the mindset of you can't control what's going on around you. You can just control how you respond to it. And Buddhism, I think I would distill it down to, and tell me if I'm wrong about this, but I would distill it down to there's not good or bad, right or wrong. There just is.
Yeah, that's right. And I'll take that a little bit further. There was a part of me where it was like, no one's right or no one's wrong, but it's okay to be judgmental and it's okay to be selective.
Okay, yeah.
Does it mean not being selective? It does mean knowing what you want, but not having the illusion control over getting it.
The attachment to it.
The attachment, and the attachment is what creates the unhappiness.
100%. It's you hit the nail right on the head. It's funny because again, in the wealth practice, I talk about, it's not where you think you should be. It's not where you want to be. It's not where you think you are. You have to start from where you actually are, and not be attached to where other people think you are. Not be attached to where you want to be, or not be attached where you think you should be. You have to, again, if you're that person who's making $200,000 a year in credit card debt and no savings, like you can't make up for what you can't be attached to, again, those thoughts of where you should be, where you want to be. You have to be where you actually are.
And even attached to your old story,
100%.
Which is how I was able to go from being a professional photographer into sales in startup, or in in more of the corporate world. And, though I have an untraditional sales background, I have a very strong sales background.
Yeah,
and
no
I'm
doubt.
very confident in what I do because I love it. But because I was able to live 10-80-10, I could break myself from saying, but I'm an artist and I should just keep going. I've invested so much time and look where I've come. I was able to kind of embrace and listen to people coming to me saying, have you thought about going in sales?
Yeah. Well,
Okay,
so this is an interesting point. So let's just go back though to college. So when you were, mine's roaming around here also. So you're in good company. But so you're in college at Ohio University. What do you want to be at that time?
Oh, that's a good question because I thought, well, at the time, I was definitely on the trajectory to being an administrator at a university.
Okay,
I worked
interesting.
in the office. I liked, seeing what the directors and the deans were doing. I was highly organized, and I definitely wanted to be in higher education administration.
Interesting. Okay. But you obviously took a much different route. So how did that change?
Okay, so then I went to graduate school at Arizona State University, and I ended up working at probably one of the most well-known contemporary galleries in that area. Every grad student's dream to be, have their art sold at Lisa Seti Gallery. And I worked in Scottsdale for about 3.5 years. Lisa was like a second mom to me.
Wow.
And grew, and that was my first taste of being around people who were millionaires and mega millionaires, people who owned their own planes, people who had, a second home or third home, they're in Arizona and they were dropping $100,000 of artwork for a home that they weren't in year round. So that exposed me to a whole different economic level.
Interesting.
And also watching Lisa as an entrepreneur of her own gallery, I just loved the business side of it. And, parts of administration is business.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah.
But it was the entrepreneurial side. And there I met, while working there, I met my portrait mentor, who is Mary Friedman, and she's now retired. But this was a woman who in the 80s would demand a minimum of $5,000 for her portraits. That's a lot of money for a portrait. Even
but
today.
This is interesting though, because you were a grad student. Again, you grew up with very little. You went to so at some point though in Ohio, you decided I want to be in the arts. So then, what were you studying at Arizona State?
Oh, same thing. That's where I got my MFA. I was a photographer.
Okay, so you went out there to pursue your passion in the arts. You end up getting a job at this high-end art gallery, and now you're rubbing elbows with millionaires on a day-to-day basis. You're being mentored by people who are high profile and well respected in the community. How was that transition though? Again, going back to not that long before that, you were living in public housing in small city Ohio. That must have been quite an adjustment. How did you adapt to that?
Yeah, I think the adaptability part is where my love for people. And again, 10-80-10. I was being fully present with that person. Like whether I was directly talking with them or not, I'm still part of Lisa's team and they're coming in and just seeing them as a person, not what they have, not what they don't have, not what they grew up with or maybe didn't grow up with. It was, who is this person? Oh, this person's funny. Oh, this person is this. And they happen to have a lot of money,
Interesting.
And so it was really just looking at people and interacting with people for who they are. Now, later, I apologize for the name dropping, but again, in terms of like moving and the ability to interact with different types of people, which someone actually said to me, they're like, oh, well, if you can maneuver very easily among the C-suite and CEOs. You really should put that down because there's a lot of salespeople who feel really intimidated. And I'm like, really? I'm like, okay. So for example, Ryan, I worked with Nancy Pelosi for years. I mean, I was her photographer anytime she came to Denver.
Wow.
And when the DNC was in Denver, when Obama first accepted his nomination, I was her girl for every private party that she had. And I had already worked with her a little bit prior to that. Now, I'm not on like texting terms with Nancy Pelosi, but definitely, I mean, it was my job to be right by her all the time. And so I knew she recognized me. We would talk occasionally, but it was all business, and that's fine by me because I love that. And then, people like the Waltons, Sam Walton's grandkids, I interact with them. And it's funny because when I first met one of them, I had no clue. I thought that his last name just happened to be Walton.
Yeah.
It was like 5 years later that I realized, like, holy crap, Walton's grandson, And so,
who's also just a human being, though.
They are, and what I found is that other people, in some ways, the difficulty is people not really treating you like a real person.
No doubt.
Treating them because they want a piece of that pie. They 100%. They want their philanthropic money. So people come at them with an agenda because they're living more in the future about what they're hoping to get, right? They want funding from the philanthropic foundation, right? Versus just looking at them as a human being. And it's the same with Nancy Pelosi. I'd say that is the most intimidating situation, compared to the gallery. Sure, at that point it was kind of intimidating and it was a little scary in terms of dealing with people who have a whole different lifestyle that I don't know about. And then when I was around Nancy Pelosi, she is a force of nature that is like no one I have ever met in my life, and she is, very focused. And I do feel that she's very genuine. I would watch her work the room like no one I have ever seen. And every person that she would be, she makes them feel, talk about a person that knows how to master living in the moment. I'd watch her, she was totally in the moment with each person she was talking to. And she was on to the next. But
this is an interesting point, though, because I feel like it's really easy to be put in this world that was very foreign to you, and to allow yourself to be intimidated by money or not worthy of being there and being worried of the acceptance. But it's really interesting because I feel like, and I don't want to put words in your mouth and tell me if I'm totally off base on this, but it's interesting, though, because your approach of seeing the person as the person, oh, this person's funny, oh, this person's interesting, oh, this person's, has a compelling story, oh, this person has a challenge, like whatever it may be, and looking past, they happen to be millionaires, but you're more focused on the person. That it seems like that probably gave you permission to not let money define you, but for people to see you as who you were.
And that's the adaptability piece.
That's
why I adapted. When you focus on them as a person and not be intimidated by their position or their title or their money or whatever, and I'm observing, oh, wow, she's really paying attention. Oh, wow, like with the Waltons, oh, wow, he really loves his kids. Oh, wow, he, when you're focused on that and your mind is not spinning with all the other assumptions and all the other facts, then you can truly connect. And I think that has been my way of being able to just connect in my community and my network. And, when after my portrait work, I was involved with a couple of organizations where I was exposed to like tons of CEOs, some of them huge companies, some of them smaller companies. Oh, actually, even with my business, probably one of the wealthiest guys in Colorado who I think at one point he owned more real estate than Ted Turner. John Malone of Liberty Global.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
And so I photographed, I was fortunate to be around him and his CEO, Mike Freeze, and, their executive team. And that, again, could be intimidating to a lot of people, but I had a job to do.
Yeah.
And I stayed focused on my job and then focused on that, but then also I feel could really respect them as a person.
So catch us up here. So you're not talking about you're a photographer in Colorado, working with some very high profile people. So bridge that gap then between you're working at the art gallery, you're getting your master's at Arizona State. How do you go from getting your master's, working in an art gallery, to then living in Colorado, running this thriving business?
Yeah, so graduated, came up here, basically launched my business, but always had a foot in academia. So I was always teaching while I was running my business.
Okay, so you were making money through teaching and then growing your business. Okay, yeah, got it.
Yep. And the business definitely became profitable, and
but how? Because you have to get clients. Just because you become a photographer doesn't mean people come to you. So like, how were you attracting these high profile people? That doesn't happen by accident.
Oh, it doesn't. I won't reveal that here.
Okay.
I had my business strategy, which I learned from Mary Friedman down in Arizona.
Okay. So you were very strategic about it. And that also leads into the sales component of it, which is why you're good at sales. Because I don't care what you're doing. If you're a creative person, you have to sell yourself.
Yeah. I don't care who you are. You have to sell yourself. You could be a landscaper. I've seen them,
Oh yeah.
You got to sell yourself, because the ones that don't, we don't hire them.
Oh, 100%. No. I joke about it. And I think this is New York. What makes New York interesting, and just the immigrant mentality and the melting pot. I joke about you walk 3 blocks and you're sold like 300 things as you're walking. And it's like everyone's a salesperson in the city. But there's something that I really appreciate about that. So you're starting. But the interesting thing is, so when you were making the transition from Arizona to Colorado and starting your own business, how did I know you're seeing these people, these multimillionaires that are coming in as people, and you're connecting with them, but there must have been something in the back of your mind where you're in, kind of like when you went to Athens, Ohio, and you were around people who were children of professors. You just knew you were going to go to college. Was this one of those things through osmosis where you were around multimillionaires? So it was just, logically, like, I'm going to be successful.
Yeah, you ask really good questions, Ryan. So I would say, yes, there is a manifesting part in this, because no matter who you are, and actually someone who was wealthy told me this, they were like, you always want more money.
No doubt.
It doesn't matter where you're at. One can always use more money. And so it's many people, we have this love-hate relationship with money, right? It's happiness, but it's not, that's the great paradox of it. And that's the greatness of, letting it go, but being intentional and knowing what you want. So yes, I did always know I wanted to be in a higher economic bracket, because it sucks being poor. Sure, I didn't know, I did know that money didn't mean happiness, but it certainly offered a lot of opportunities that I didn't want to miss out on. So, yes, part of my strategy, even getting the job at the gallery, was I was putting myself in positions. I was putting myself, or trying to place myself in places that would help me keep moving up.
It's funny, because I think you're spot on with that. Money definitely doesn't equal happiness. I've been in the wealth business for over 15 years. And I have countless stories. I have a really interesting vantage point when it comes to money. And I can tell you that's 100% true, but it does make things easier. And it definitely is better to have money than not have money.
Right.
But I will also say the idea that, and I think this is one thing I think is really important to stress, the idea that the pursuit of money was going to leave you unhappy is false. And I
Yep.
think the pursuit of money, to the extent that it's in alignment with your mission, your passion, your talents, and creating a business and moving it forward, I think it's 100% appropriate to want to get paid and to want to grow that, to the extent that you're providing a good service. It's taking pride in your work to say, I've invested in myself. I'm really good at what I do, and I'm going to charge X for it because I know I'm going to give you. That's a sense of self-pride that you have. Take the money out of it, exactly, but it's also knowing that you provide a worth that can help people. At the end of the day, if you're not helping people, and if you provide a shoddy service, then you're ultimately going to go out of business.
Yep.
Right. So I think that's where money, I think, can be a really good proxy for just giving you the signal that you're moving forward, that you're adding value, and money doesn't always equate to value, but a lot of times it does. And I just want to,
for sure,
100%. And that doesn't mean that your self-worth is tied to money. So someone who has $1 billion is not more worthy than someone who has $100,000. But I want to take away, though, the anxiety or the guilt or the shame or the notion that, more money creates more problems. That's not totally true if you think about it and you have the relationship with it in the right way.
Yeah. I was actually in a podcast last week, and she asked what were your top 3 tips. Number 1 was know thyself, but number 2 was look at your relationship to money. And always be working on it. With food, it's like food, money, but I love going back to something that you had talked about, the pursuit of money, the paper chasing type of tactic. That there's strategies of how you do that, and you can either do it with attachment or without attachment. That's the difference of being unhappy versus happy. But the pursuit of money really is a way to get the most of yourself. I mean, talk about pushing yourself mentally to get the most of who you are and what you can offer to the world.
I 100% agree, but it's like, so I'm there's the whole joke. How do you know someone is a marathoner? They tell you. So I'm going to tell you. So I'm an avid marathoner, and I'll tell you that, the medal isn't, you don't run marathons for the medal. You run the marathons for the process of getting better and for doing something really hard. But I still accept the medal at the end of it, and I still have my medals. And it's something that has meaning to me. Again, I'm not attached to it, but I have. If my wife threw them out by accident, I wouldn't cry. I wouldn't be worried about it. But at the end of the day, like, it is something that gives great meaning and pride. But it's because I did it. No one did it for me, right? I'm the one that had to do it. And I think money is similar to that, where I want to see my business grow and make more money. And look, I have a standard of living that I want to continue to live, but at the end of the day, I think it's also a proxy for the process and getting better in the process and offering more value and giving it and offering it to more people. And I think that's 100% fine.
And I like how you say, the medal and even the money, right, that you're earning, it basically represents that journey.
100%. Exactly. That's exactly right.
Material thing that represents everything behind it.
That's right. And again, it's one of those things where, like, I could go running without needing to run 26.2 miles or not needing to sign up for a race. But there's something that I enjoy about that. And it's a ceremony around it. And it's a way to continue to push myself because I know there's a date on the calendar that I need to get to. And I think about the same thing with my business and certain proxies I have and certain initiatives that I have. And again, but it's just really interesting with the relationship with money, because I do come across people that are super well-intentioned people, and again, aren't attached to money, but then almost have an attachment to not making money.
Oh my God, that's a whole other ball game.
Right?
It is.
You
ask really good questions.
Oh no, thank you. I know I'm really. That's why I wanted to start this podcast. I'm really fascinated with people and really fascinated with stories. And,
Mhm.
I found your story really, really compelling. And again, I just thought it was really interesting because, again, you look at, you're a sales executive, but then you're putting out these really thoughtful videos that aren't necessarily logically leading directly to new sales for your business, but are of service and are something that I'm sure attract new customers and attract people to you. But I think it could also, I'm sure you've helped a lot of people during this really challenging time.
Oh, well, that's the hope,
Yeah.
that it
Yeah.
can help somebody. But, with LinkedIn and being a part of that community, obviously everybody's out there. What I love about it is everyone's out there to do business.
Yeah.
And you know how it is when you get the pitch, the straight pitch in your messenger, like, hey, we offer this. Can we schedule a time? It's such a turnoff, because
100%. Yeah.
and salespeople, I would say sophisticated salespeople, and CEOs of sales, and a lot of people wear the sales hat. LinkedIn is the platform to network and outreach and get new business, but we all know you don't do it in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Or I should say, those of us who don't do it that way will attract people who also don't do it that way.
Mm-hmm.
The
Mm-hmm.
majority of the people who comment on my videos or like my videos, what's interesting is people who I interact with for my work, and some of our big partners, they'll never comment, they'll never like it, but I'll get emails, Ryan, where they're like, we're really big fans of your LinkedIn content. I'm like, oh, really? Like, oh my God. And
Totally.
so what it does, though it's not a direct sale, I still build a relationship because they're starting to see another side of who I am.
Mm-hmm.
It's know, like, trust.
Yep. Yeah. I 100% agree with you. It's funny. I've released 2 episodes of this podcast. I have a bunch banked away. So this is probably going to be released, I would say, in sometime in late October, early November, unless for whatever reason you like it released
Yeah,
earlier and we can
that's
talk about
great
that.
timing.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. But it's interesting because it's not necessarily my business. Again, I'm a wealth management professional. I own my own wealth management practice, but it's interesting just so far 2 episodes being released and the feedback that I've received, and a lot of feedback being from clients that are now seeing me in a different way. And I literally yesterday, I just made an introduction. One of the guests I just had on, I made an introduction to one of my clients' nephews, and they both work in the nonprofit space in prison reform. And it's one of those things where it's a really powerful connection, and something I'm so happy I'm able to provide that value that for my client that would not have come out if I didn't start this podcast.
Yeah, yeah. When it comes down to it, whether it's business, professional life, it all comes down to people,
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
know, and
Totally. Yeah.
no matter if it's the direct, blunt person,
Mm-hmm.
there is a human being inside of that,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
I think it comes down to, when you're a content distributor, like with your podcast, um, though business is business, a big part of business is people. And who do you choose to work with? And but
Yeah.
how do you get to know them? And that's the cool thing about LinkedIn is it's the world's biggest networking party.
Yeah.
And
Totally.
so and
But
it's
I think a level of authenticity is really important.
yeah,
And even if that means some people aren't necessarily going to work with you because they don't like it, well, then, I mean, the opposite's going to happen. You're going to get
yeah,
someone
that's
because of
great.
it. Yeah, that 100%, no
Great.
doubt, no doubt. Look, I'm looking to grow my business, but at the same time, I also want to grow a business with a business that is a lifestyle business that helps
Yeah.
me live my best life. And part of that is attracting clients that I really like.
Yeah, there's nothing better than having clients you love.
Exactly. Yeah, no
So
doubt.
great.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really wonderful to have people, like even just the Waltons or Nancy Pelosi. I mean, just being around. I mean, I was so grateful that so many of the families I worked with, the moms and the dads, that it was just it was almost like not working.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree with that. Well, look, I mean, you have such an interesting story, and I really appreciate you sharing this today. I think your story, and especially with what's going on right now, and especially with what you're posting on LinkedIn. First off, if someone listening to this who wants to be able to engage with you, what's the best way to do so?
Yeah, they can connect with me on LinkedIn or, hit follow, and then they, I tend the messages get really lost. I mean, I get so many messages and there are a lot of pitches and,
Yeah.
I get it, that's what they need to do and that's fine. But a person would probably get lost in the messenger. If you make a comment to me in a post, you gotta tag me because I may not see it. That's kind of a trick that some people don't understand. They might make a reply and I even used to do this. I'd comment on someone else's post and be like, did they see it? The answer is no, they did not see it.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, and I do have, I put my contact, my email, one of my emails in LinkedIn, but for the most part, if they send me a direct message, chances are I'll see it. But if they don't hear from me, and it's not a pitch, I do reply to everybody who's sincerely reaching out.
But they can follow your content and they can engage with you that way too.
Yeah, that's a great start. That's a great start.
Yeah. So for someone who is struggling right now with COVID, let's say they've lost their job or they think they're going to lose their job and they're, the world is crumbling in on them. Based on your experience, what's your best advice for that person?
Yeah, there's plan A, plan B, plan C. And then first, allow yourself to feel sad, feel disappointed, and feel afraid. Go through all of those and embrace it. Don't squash it, right? But then as you pick yourself up from that, and there's a time limit to that as well. You can't just let it shut you down for a whole year. So
what's an appropriate time limit?
I think, a month.
Okay.
Be a couple months, just allow yourself to feel that. Don't feel like don't begin the chicken with the head cut off and then just pushing those feelings aside. Sometimes it's happening somewhat simultaneously where you're in grief, but you're kind of taking some steps to kind of start move forward. You're pulling up your resume and reworking it. But you're still kind of really pretty bummed about the whole thing, know. So everybody's process is a little different, but when you're hitting like 6 months and more, it's to the point of it's going to be destructive for you.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah, and so then as you're picking it back up, everybody really is very understanding. It is a great time to network. And then some people have been posting like, yeah, everybody's networking now, but once they're through it, no one's going to be reaching out. That's okay. The people who understand it and who will support you. Do you know how many introductions I've made this week? I've made, there's people who've reached out to me and like, hey, I'm hitting the pavement again. People, sometimes I don't even know well, but they live 10 minutes from me, that they're in my community. But, I've made introductions. I may have not, it's something that I can do, may not necessarily have time to pick up a call with them, but I'll make introductions for them. There's 3 people this week I did that for.
Wow.
So know that if you're anyone who's listening to this and they're in that rut, don't be afraid to reach out to your network, understanding that you're kind of going at it because of course you're looking for a job. Don't be embarrassed about that. The ones who understand it, they're going to get it and they're happy to help you. Probably more than you're realizing. And, I think that's where the creative writing comes, it's just and that's what I did for one of these people I did introductions for this week. I was like, hey, I just put the cards out on the table. I'm making this introduction because this person's hitting the pavement right now. And we're in a tough time and I'm asking you to please make time for this person because you at a company and I'm making this for you guys. So don't be afraid to reach out because of your circumstance. People will help.
Was there a part C?
the third part?
Yeah.
The third part is know that you will not be eternally unemployed.
Mm-hmm.
You know you're going to get your next job.
That's a really good
You
point.
know you're going to get the next job. So hold that in your heart that of course you're going to get a job.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know when and you don't know where. You have to be proactive, and that's the let go, the attachment piece. Don't be like, I hope to have a job.
Yeah.
That's attachment that's unnecessary and is going to lead to behaviors that may not really be you.
Mm-hmm.
But when you get away from the attachment to knowing, when I'm going to have another job, then you can kind of get out of that sporadic helplessness and manipulation, and then just acting in ways that are just potentially not really helpful.
Yeah. You have to know that it's going to work out, but you can't in the moment force it if you can't do anything about it right now. And I agree. Sometimes the best thing to do is just let go in that moment and to do something else. And sometimes it's also appreciating the time that you have too.
Absolutely. And embracing where you're at.
Mm-hmm.
There's always, and I know this from being poor, it's like there are resources out there for paying your electric bill, for paying your mortgage, there are resources, and even more so. The resources are there and people are ready to help. And so, but just trusting that, knowing it, versus feeling uncertain about it. These are uncertain times, but shift from uncertainty to knowing and confidence in that. Then you'll ride the wave like a champ.
Yeah. I think it's an amazing advice. Angie, I cannot thank you for joining this podcast today. Incredible interview. Really appreciate your story. I know it's going to help a lot of people. And I look forward to staying in touch with you, and I encourage everyone to follow you on LinkedIn. You're posting a lot of really good stuff.
Oh, that's so sweet of you. It's my honor.
Yeah. Thanks, Angie. We'll talk soon. All right. That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed learning from Angie. Angie's actually been really helpful in my LinkedIn journey, building an audience, as well as helping to think about content creation and being a creator of content, not just a consumer of content. I really encourage you to follow Angie on LinkedIn. And if you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review on iTunes. It does help us with the rankings and getting this message out to more people. All right, with that, I hope you enjoyed, and I look forward to seeing you next week.